Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly live stream. Actually, 2 days after my last live stream, or 3 days. Um, was it on Thursday? So 3 days after my other live stream, um, I decided to keep the subject open today for anybody who has um, questions about Mexico. I didn't really think I was busy making a follow up video to my last live stream, and basically I just decided, well, we'll just leave this one and ask me anything about Mexico stream. Um, the other thing too, I need to warn everybody. It sounds like we're going to have a rainstorm here. Um, Monterrey is having a lot of problems with electricity. Uh, Actually, a lot of Mexico, they're having the CFE is having issues. They have shortages of transformers and stuff, but the bigger cities, I guess, get affected a little bit more. So if I get cut off in this live stream, I apologize. I probably won't come back if we get cut off, because that means I'm out of electricity. The area I'm at, usually when the electricity goes out, it only goes out for a short period of time, not long periods of time. Other areas of town, I live on the outskirts, so it doesn't affect us as much. But normally when there's especially in this area, when there's a big storm, uh, one of the power lines gets hit and we end up out of power. So um, just in case I get cut off, I apologize. And we have Wilfredo here, Kai here, welcome, and Streetcar Named Desire. I have a few questions as I plan to visit for the first time. Do I need a 180-day visa to live in Mexico for 1 to 2 months? What's the longest I can stay on vacation? Actually, Streetcar, let's bring that up. And Wilfredo, he's in Arlington. I think the last live stream you showed you're still in Arlington. Um, Streetcar, basically, you're going to come and visit. Right now, to be honest with you, 180 days. I always make the comment, 180 days is not guaranteed. Right now, this happened probably last year, early last year. Actually, it's been happening. They've been modernizing the immigration system, and Congress just finished basically telling the immigration service that they needed to make the line go faster, I guess, expedite entry into Mexico. So one of the ways of doing it is they had the computer system in place, and so they got rid of the paper FMM, and now they have an easy button. I don't know how easy it is. I don't have access to their computers, but it's basically they're letting everybody in pretty much when you fly in. They're giving everybody an automatic 180 days. Usually, and this is another thing to mention here, when you buy your plane ticket, you're actually buying the first, I'm not sure if it's a 7 days or 14 days is free and then actually Brett Jones was the one that said that you can actually go back to the airlines and request that fee back if they don't let you in for 180 days. But you pretty much paid for your 180-day visa. So that's number one. Number two, basically immigration is just pushing a button, writing in your passport, and go on your way. So they're giving 180 days. Now, I've even heard where they write in your passport 7 days, but when actually this has happened to several people that have gone through the regularization program. They go in and they say, hey, my FMM is expired because it says 7 days, but then they go and look up the electronic FMM and somebody pushed the easy button and they really got 180 days. And unbeknownst to them, because it was written 7 days in the passport. That has happened. So as far as if you're going to come here to live for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, even 180 days, not 6 months, because sometimes 6 months doesn't equal 180 days. I've been corrected on that. As long as you are going to stay under 180 days or up to 180 days, as long as they give you the permission, of course, you're going to have a round trip ticket to show the immigration officer. He more than likely, usually they used to ask you what's your purpose of your visit, blah, 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 blah. But they're more concerned about people getting through the airports. Now, where people have been getting less days, because I have seen feedback where no, I didn't get 180 days, because basically what happened is when this started happening at the airports, everybody started going crazy that the 180 days is back in effect. They're automatically giving everybody 180 days. It's not automatic. It's still the immigration officer. It's the immigration officer trying to get you to the airport faster. Now, what I will say about those computer systems is they do have now tracking systems. So if this is the 5th or 6th time that you come in a row, you might get taken over to the side. That's just to prevent repeat entries. The other thing that they're doing to prevent repeat entries, for example, San Miguel, the INM office, is not accepting regularization applications for individuals who have repeat entries, because their attitude is, well, you went back to the United States and you could have done it back in the United States consulate, the Mexican consulate. So 180 days is not guaranteed, but more than likely, I'm just telling you right now, more than likely. As a matter of fact, I had this question asked because I've had several people ask, well, can I ask for 7 or 14 days so I can regularize, go to the regularization program? And what I tell them is, unfortunately, actually asking for 7 or 14 days might not happen. Before it would, but right now it might not. Actually, if you want to come in for less days, you can come in on the land border, because what happens on the land border is now that's where you pay the fee, your 300 peso fee, because it's not included in your plane ticket. So you could say, I just want the free one. But I don't know if it's still working that way, because I haven't had to go through the land border and ask for an FMM. And then also when they were really cracking down on when the systems first came up and they started denying people and everything else, the land borders are the ones that were a little bit more, I guess you might say, liberal in giving you the 180 days. A lot of them is because the systems weren't caught up. And also the land border works a lot differently than it does in an airport. But streetcar, I don't think you're going to have a problem coming in here for 1 to 2 months. And the longest you can stay on one permission is 180 days. So more than likely, they're going to rubber stamp and put in your passport 180 days. Now, I do advise people to have proof that you're coming back, because, like I said, it's the discretion of the immigration officer. And Steffi here, greetings, Rainey. Thank you for keeping this open. I do have some questions relating to my sister's upcoming trip to Leon to complete our residency visas. I'll type them and hope it's too much, or hope it's not too much, probably is what you're trying to say. Not a problem, Steffi. I'm here to answer your questions if I can. Like I said, I'm not going to claim to be an expert like some other people do. Other than that, we're gonna answer some questions, and also just to guys let you know, I did release a video to follow up on my live stream for those of you that didn't want to watch the whole hour rant about how this isn't right. I kind of summarized it. I really do encourage you guys to pass it around. That's the only way we can get the word out that this is going on. I try to post it in Facebook groups. Several of them, I post regularly, but I don't post in all of them. Share this with your friends. Share this with people who might not subscribe to the channel. I'm not trying to get views. I'm just trying to get the word out on this, because we really need to stop people going to the consulate and demanding that they be given residency based on basically a basic law, or even worse, if they take JB's advice and try to say, here's the immigration law, here's where I qualify, that could be a recipe for disaster. Actually, it could be more of an embarrassment on their side. Number one, okay, Steffi, Steffi, I'm just going to say Steffi. How do we make sure they stamp our resident visas correctly? What should we look for? What they'll usually do, now that everything is electronic, and Steffi, if you have an immigration facilitator, this is where an immigration facilitator comes in really, really handy. They're gonna write on your most airports will write canje. When you go up to the immigration official, make sure you have your passport open to the visa stamp and tell them that you're here for canje. What they'll usually do is they'll stamp, and actually I think they stamp the same page as your visa now. The problem before in the past, they'd give you a paper FMM. Now they're stamping. Now, one thing that they did do, actually, this happened to American Dream. They got a hold of me and they were panicking. And actually, I didn't have the answer, but they went to immigration and they got the answer. But sometimes they will actually, but this is on reentries. They'll stamp entrada or salida. And then what they did on theirs is they put TR. So you might get some variation of that, but they should write canje, CANJE, when they stamp your passport. And they should only give you 30 days. If you see something that says 180 days, 60 days, 7 days, that means there's something wrong and that you don't want to get checked in as a tourist. The second thing you want to do, Steffi, is that you want to make sure that you have that access to be able to get a hold of the FMM, because I think they make you print it out when you do your actual application. That's what they were doing before. They were giving a QR code before. If you have a facilitator, the facilitator knows exactly how to pull it up. You have to kind of create this account. I haven't really researched lately on if the system's improved, but you can get a copy of your FMM. You can actually look it up and get a copy of your FMM. So that's what you want to look for, is that they stamp your visa canje, and they only give you 30 days, basically. So if you see 180, 60, 90, or whatever it might be, then that means and as long as you make sure canje, that if you can't speak Spanish or whatever, that they know that it's canje. So that should help you there. Gringos are us. When you were in Cabo, were you subject to the 16% VAT tax? We have 2 resort stays coming up, and since we did not have an exit stamp in our passport, we were worried about being hit with the tax. What we did get hit with, we were staying in a timeshare, so what we did get hit with was the occupancy. There was several taxes. You know what? I didn't look at the VAT tax, to be honest with you, Gringos R Us. I did notice at the hotel we did get hit with the EVA and then the hotel occupancy tax and a couple of other things, but I didn't see the VAT tax on there. But that's a good question. Actually, I should look that up, to be honest with you. Okay, Steph, how do we make sure they stamp our resident visas correctly at the airport? I'm sorry, I just answered that one. Colonel Jim Warhol, great channel, very useful. How difficult is the language, history, and culture test for permanent residents seeking citizenship? It's very hard. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. I'm actually waiting 2 more years to do my citizenship application because I'm exempt at 60 from the citizenship and test. You do still have to do the language test after 60, but you're exempt from the cultural history. The language test you have to take regardless. The history and culture test, I've seen some example questions, and it's really, really detailed. Of course, I worked in the immigration, having worked as a federal agent, I worked in the immigration field, and we had people that I worked with people's naturalizations and stuff. And the test that they give for naturalization in the U.S. is like really basic, like how many stars on the flag, how many stripes on the flag, who was the first president of the United States. The difference with the Mexican cultural history test, you may hear Diego Rivera, what is he known for, and what was his birthday? Where was he born? basically on some obscure artist or not obscure artist. Actually, my wife has looked. She's Mexican. She grew up Mexican. I'm born and raised here in Mexico, and didn't move to the United States till later in life. But a lot of the questions that she should have actually learned in first grade or I guess primary, secondary, and that she didn't even learn these things and those she couldn't even answer some of those questions. I mean, she knows who the figures are and everything else, but the detail that they go into is amazing. I mean, down to what little town was he born in and exactly what location, what's the address. I mean, I'm being a little bit over hypothetical here, but it is very, very hard. The cultural test. Now, the Spanish test, from what I understand, is just conversational. You'll go in, you have an interview with the SRE officer or the person that is giving you your citizenship, and you have a conversation. It's a short conversation. Then I think you read a short verse, and they'll ask you to read a paragraph, and they'll say, "What does this say?" It's a simple paragraph. It's basic Spanish. It's not supposedly super, super hard or technical Spanish. And then supposedly they give you a picture of something, and then you have to write down in Spanish, in your best Spanish, what the picture is. So like if it's a picture of a horse in a pasture, you have to write down in Spanish, in your best Spanish, what you see. But do you have to just prove that you have the ability to communicate in Spanish? That's the standard that they use. So if you're not writing the exact punctuation or the accents in the right place, it's not as hard. And actually, I personally am waiting to 60 to actually do the citizenship thing, to be honest with you. Thank you for the... So I go to the immigration office to verify the electronic visa stamp. I'm restricted to certain states as a traveler. Let me see. I had... Okay, let me see here. Sorry, So you go to the immigration office to verify the electronic stamp. No, actually you don't. Streetcar, you don't go to the immigration office to verify your electronic visa stamp. There's a website that you can get on, and then basically you have to sign up for an account, and then you basically can download it from that website. So that's how you check your electronic visa. But your visa stamp will say how many days that you got. Am I restricted to certain states as a traveler? Is your second part of the question? No. Once you get an FMM to come here, that's your permission to be here as a visitor for up to 180 days to travel the territory of Mexico. So you can go anywhere from Chiapas to San Miguel. You can continue your flight. Let's say you fly into Mexico City and I want to visit Cancun for a week. You can go to Cancun on your FMM. That's not a problem. You can travel the entire territory of Mexico. And so that's how you, and actually, as long as you have that visa stamp, that stamp, and you know you got the 180 days, usually it'll say 180, or they'll stamp, some airports have done this where they stamp the date that it expires. But what I would do is just, as long as you have that, they can look it up in the system. You shouldn't have a problem. Oh, streetcar named Desire, add anyone. Is he saying to look out for canje on a visa stamp? Actually, streetcar, canje is for individuals that went to the consulate and are applying for temporary residency. It has nothing to do with your situation. If you're coming in as a visitor just to live here for a couple of months, you're going to get a different kind of visa. And it's not even a visa. Unless you're from a country that requires a visa, then you will need a visa, but you're going to get an FMM. even based on your visa, or if you're from the United States, Canada, or whatever other country that they don't require a visa, you just go straight to getting an FMM. They will stamp. The Canje thing was for some individuals. When you apply for residency here in Mexico, you go to the consulate and they put a visa foil. You have to get a separate visa. And that's because you're going to complete the process. You're getting a visa to come into the country to complete the process of getting your residency. So you're coming in differently. You're not coming in as a visitor. You're coming in as a applicant for residency. That's why I said you're only going to get 30 days, because when you get that visa stamp, you have 180 days to enter Mexico. And when you enter Mexico, you have 30 days to get to the immigration office. But I don't want to confuse you anymore. That the canje is what I'm talking about, because people that have that immigration stamp, if they come in and they check you in as a tourist, there's a lot of issues in immigration. You kind of cancel you basically come in as a tourist, and you can have a lot of issues, including having to start all over in the residency process. That's why the individual that asked that question basically asked the question, how do I make sure that they didn't check me in as a tourist? Let me see here. Oh, Wilfredo, that's what you're doing in Arlington. You're bringing back a car and you're going to nationalize it. Um, Actually, the best way to nationalize a vehicle, and excuse me because I have to drink water. I've explained it in my other live stream. It comes from my cancer, my saliva glands. One side was totally destroyed from the radiation, so I have to drink water. So if I don't want to aggravate anybody from drinking water, but Wilfredo, actually nationalizing the vehicle, as long as it, of course, you've probably already done the research that it qualifies. You have to go through a customs broker. I don't know who does it. I've never gone through the process. They're the ones that'll do all the paperwork for nationalizing the vehicle. Basically, you're going to import the vehicle and then nationalize it. So the first step is going to a customs broker to bring the vehicle in. I don't know how much they cost. And then, of course, you have to pay the applicable. It's an import, basically. When you do your temporary import permit, when you come in, like just come in as a visitor and you want to drive your car, or you're a temporary resident, you drive your car and you want to bring your U.S. plated vehicle. Basically, you're actually importing that vehicle into Mexico. That's why they call it a temporary import permit. You are technically, but you're telling the government of Mexico, I'm not gonna keep this car here. I'm gonna return back to the country of origin where this car is, or where I brought it from. And when you import, so you don't have to pay taxes. You have to pay a deposit and whatever the fees are, but you don't have to pay taxes. But what happens is that when you actually nationalize the vehicle, you're actually fully importing the car into Mexico and you're making it legal. So the customs broker is the one that's you're going to have to get a hold of a customs broker. And actually some customs brokers won't do it. They specialize in merchandise for companies or whatever. But if you find a good customs broker on the border, that would probably be the best bet. They usually have their brokerage fees. Then you're going to have to pay your value-added tax, and then your import fees and all of that stuff. And that's where they should be able to tell you what it'll cost. And they'll do all the paperwork for you, basically. And you might have to send your car to what they call a bonded warehouse. It's like a secure place, and then bring the car over. I don't know how long the process takes, but the other thing that I'm not sure of is there was a program to legalize foreign vehicles because there was a lot of vehicles that were here in Mexico that people bought in the United States, and they were just driving them around illegally, and they're called the chocolate cars, chocolates. But I'm not sure. That program was from state to state. And to be honest with you, I don't even think it exists anymore. It was supposed to go away. It was only for a limited time, but it got extended. And there was only certain requirement. I don't know if the 2012 Town and Country would qualify, But I do know there are some facilitators that will do that process. But uh, the way to bring it in and nationalize it totally off just from bringing it in from scratch, you're going to have to start with a customs broker. Oh, hold on. Yeah. And actually, gringos are all correct, Ernie. Our visa page in the passport is stamped Kanye. Actually, I remember we had to argue for with the immigration officer when I was helping you guys come in, um, but I didn't look at the stamp actually. Steffi, so are we allowed to stay 30 days? I'm arriving September 14th, but scheduled to return on October 30th. Do I have to change my return date? No, you don't have to change your return date. Like I said, Steffi, more than likely, 98, 99% chance, especially if you've never been here before, 99, I'll probably even, I don't know, I'll put my bets on 100% chance, depending on which airport you're going into, you're going to get 180 days. Because what they're doing right now, like I told you, they have this easy button. What happened is that, and actually, part of the mandate from Congress was telling, and actually they even have kiosks now where you don't even have to go through the immigration office. You just scan your passport in some airports. Now, for residents, never go through the kiosk. This is only for visitors. Eventually, they're going to have a trusted traveler program that residents may be able to go to the kiosk one day, but don't go through the kiosk at this time. But they even started, they were given the authority to use technology to expedite the entry. That's basically, they actually amended the immigration law to enable them to use technology to expedite the entry, your entry. So what that means is that since they're trying to reduce, usually it used to take 2 to 3, like basically if you were in the line at the Cancun airport, it would take 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours. Now they've actually gotten that down to like getting you through it in less than 30 minutes. The lines are not backed up. They're not, you're not sitting there and you filled out your form wrong and you have to go back. So basically this electronic system pretty much gives you that 180 days because it's easier for him to just push a button and give you the, scan your passport, 180 days and write. And that process only takes less than a minute, right? Now, if he were to say, well, I got to give you 30 days and then I'm going to write, it's going to take him a little bit longer. Now, maybe in the computer, if you've been coming back and forth every 180 days, then the computer might have a red flag, red flag, red flag. Okay, wait a second. I'm going to ask you more questions. Or they might just ask you 1 or 2 questions while they're pushing the easy button. I call it the easy button. That's the only way to explain it. But you should be able to. And here's the thing: if you have your plane tickets and you're let's say you said you're coming in on the 14th, but you're leaving September 14th, October 30th. You have your plane tickets, and if they insist that they give you 30 days and less, not less, this deal of giving you less than what, usually when you have a return ticket, they're going to give you whatever it takes to get you back home. They're not. There was a period of time that some people's vacations did get messed up, and it was a political situation with the United States, and immigration was just giving out 5 days, 7 days, that kind of stuff. But that's not happening right now. So I wouldn't worry so much about, you're probably going to get 100. You're going to get more days than you need, probably more than likely. I can probably give you a good 99% probability on that. And if I'm wrong, feel free to say you were wrong because as far as I know, they're expediting everybody. Yeah, Diego Rivera, exactly. But I wouldn't know his birthday. Would a Mexican even know to retain these random facts? That's the problem, Streetcar, with the test right now, the cultural test, a lot of these are random facts that are like, I'm serious. Even I'll tell you what, we even read some of my in-laws, my father-in-law, he's a professor, well, retired economy professor, a scholar. And my in-laws are very, very, probably more educated about Mexican culture and history and all of that stuff. And we posed some of the cultural exam questions to my in-laws, and they were like, wow. Like, even the ones that they knew, they were looking at us like, how do they expect anybody to know that? So it is a pretty rough test. I, I don't know were you responding to. You get 30 days to report to INM office. That's part of the clock ticking on you. Yeah, that's correct. The Conhe, that's when I was telling them not to make sure they say Conhe. Um, that's another, exactly what gringos are saying, is that's what gives you the 30 days. If they start writing days in your passport, that and you're coming in on a Conhe, you're coming in to get your residency, that's what a big red flag that they didn't do it right. Thank you for the detailed answer. Is there a way to legally avoid the citizenship test other than turning 60? Actually, not really, Jim. Um, there is a study guide, from what I understand, um, and there are some practice questions, but I think the only way to there is no other way that I'm aware of. I'm actually married to a Mexican citizen, so I'll probably get it through that. Um, the variations on the way you qualify, there's different ways to qualify, and usually the amount of time that you have to have been a permanent resident, depending on your situation, are the different ways to nationalize. Uh, Sometimes there's ways of doing it right away, naturalizing right away. Uh, there's ways where you only have to wait 2 years, and then there's other ways where you have to wait, I believe, 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't looked at this in a while, and I did get the time frames a little bit messed up the last time I did a live stream. But that's the only exemption from the cultural test, unfortunately. And even if you naturalize by being a descendant, like you have your someone brought up this point, and actually it's a good point. One of the ways of naturalizing is being a descendant of a Mexican citizen. For example, your grandfather was a Mexican citizen, but your mother or father didn't take the time to fix their papers. And then all of a sudden your mother or father is deceased. And then you can actually naturalize based on the fact that your grandfather was a Mexican citizen, but you still have to go through the cultural test. Now, someone else is doing the process, and I feel compelled to talk about it, because what they did in order to avoid that test was that their grandfather or grandmother was a Mexican citizen. Their parents never fixed anything, but their parents technically derived citizenship by birth. So what they did was even though their parents are deceased, there is a process, as long as you have the birth certificates, the death certificates, where they basically went ahead and got their parents Mexican citizenship, even though their parents were deceased. And then now they're able to get their citizenship but that they had to hire a lawyer and everything to do the whole process. And that's probably one way you could do it if you have a grandfather or grandmother that are Mexican citizens. But even that process is kind of hard because, for example, in the United States, we don't use two names. Here in Mexico, you use the legal name. Your name is, as a matter of fact, my wife's uses whatever's on her national registration card is the name she uses. Even though she uses my last name in the United States after she changed her name, and she's got on her driver's license and everything in the United States. So what happens? Your parents might have had you, and they use your mom on your birth certificate. It may say instead of your mom, let's say it's your mom, and your mom may have taken your dad's last name. So on the birth certificate, the mom and dad are, your last name, but on her birth certificate, her name is actually legally something else here in Mexico. That's where actually I have a sister-in-law, an ex-sister-in-law that is having that problem right now and trying to get her citizenship. So they're very fickle on names. So I do have to take a disclaimer on that. If you go through that process, you do have to have everything matching and the names matching. Gringos R Us has a great point, and this is something that I always say. Make sure that you hire a good facilitator. Once you have your appointment, yeah, that's right. The time clock does stop because at one time they were so backlogged in immigration. It was like they'd give you an appointment 3 months away, and you were like, okay, if I have 30 days, but I have my appointment in 3 months. No, but once you have an appointment, you legally can stay here as long as you get that appointment before your 30 days. And let me see here. Yeah, Nerd Uno, there is customs brokers on the border. Taxes on the vehicle are higher than the value of the vehicle. Yeah, actually, you're correct, Nerd Uno. They are a little bit higher because they have their own blue book. It's not like the blue book, because we are all used to in the United States is blue book value, and customs has an actual separate blue book on what the vehicle is worth. And probably more than likely, because they're going to be collecting taxes, it's going to be higher than what it's worth on the blue book value. And the customs broker will have all of that stuff. Okay, Steffi. After our canje are finished, my sister will be staying only 7 days, but I will remain and try to scout residential locations. What do you think about staying at a hostel as an elder, non-Spanish speaker? It actually, Steffi, I depends on where you're going to be. Actually, Gringos R Us is asking us what city. They've stayed. Actually, Gringos R Us have stayed in a lot of Airbnbs and hostel type places in their adventures. They could probably tell you depending on what city. I'll tell you what, Steph, depending if it's in a tourist area, I'll be honest with you, if it's like in Cancun, most hostels are just full of basically tourists. It's going to be Americans or whatever. A lot of the, I guess a lot of the hostels have gone Airbnb. So that would probably be your best bet. Gringos R Us uses Airbnb extensively. They could probably give you some good, you're saying Guanajuato. Actually, I saw this right here. Yergami is where we will start. I have to come with a list of locations within reasonable travel. Actually, Guanajuato, I'm not sure about what the hostel situation is there as far as hostels and small hotels. What we had done when we went to San Miguel, we went to booking.com. They also found like a little hostel type place where we could stay in. And it's a tourist place because it's on booking.com. Airbnb. The only thing with Airbnb is just know your area where you're going to be going. That kind of thing. San Miguel de Allende, most hostels downtown are going to be tourist. So usually in the tourist areas, most of your hostels are basically going to be full of tourists anyway. So you should be good. Now, if you were going to, I don't know, Sinaloa and saying I want to stay in a hostel, I think you need to be a little bit careful what kind of hostel or where it is or where in the state of Sinaloa it is, because Mazatlan happens to be in the state of Sinaloa. So you might be going to Mazatlan and it might be okay, but if you go further south or in Sinaloa, you might not want to even be in that area at all. So it just depends where you're at. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Kai, how do I prove my address in Mexico in order to get my RFC as a temporary resident? If I'm staying at an Airbnb, I'd like to open a Mexican bank account at some point. Um, Actually, Kai, I know you're kind of in a transition of going back and forth, and you got your temporary, so you could get it ahead of time. Um, I went through the RFC process. What I did was I actually hired a facilitator that does that, so I didn't have to go and wait in line with Hacienda. They used an address. Actually, they used an address out of Oaxaca, I believe, and they got the RFC for me. Uh, and then I had to go to SAT. Here's the problem: I had to go to SAT. Then I had to get my electronic. They call it firma. It's an electronic thing. You take a USB stick and they give you a key, and then which enables you to log onto the website, and you can change your address. Um, what I would do is go ahead and make an appointment with SAT, Kai. They're pretty. Here's the thing about it. Just give them your Airbnb address. As far as, but they're gonna want what they call a comprobante de domicilio. More than likely, you can still try. You're not gonna waste time at SAT because pretty much if you get an appointment, your appointment. Well, I'm not sure about Mexico City because it is pretty, but they were pretty. Did it here in Monterrey, and I was in and out on my firma. I was in and out really quick. But there are some facilitators that have accountants that can get you your RFC. And the only problem is that they're going to use a generic address or an address to their accounting firm. And you're going to have to basically change the address once you get here. I wouldn't worry too much about the address on your RFC unless you're planning to do some type of business here. Actually, when I actually I hadn't updated my RFC. I did get a bank account before this requirement to have an RFC was popular. But when they offered me a credit card, I got a credit card. You don't want to get credit cards here in Mexico, but we got one for the purpose of points. We pay it off every month. Literally, the interest rate's like 18% a month, not 18% a year. I mean, it's outrageous. But several advantages too is that you can pay like 6 months without interest. Those types of things. We got the credit card, and when I was they offered it to me, and I said, well, we want to build our credit here in Mexico. Not that we'll ever get loans or anything, but just to build a credit record. So when I got the credit card, they actually said, hey, you don't have an RFC, and I need to see your RFC. And I was able to give them my RFC. But my RFC was still under the old address. They didn't care. All they wanted was the number. And when I went to the hospital, it took me a couple of months before because I had to get an appointment with SAT to get my e-firma and then and do that. Thank you. Nerd Uno. That's good to hear. The chocolate vehicles problem is still going on, but the vehicle have to be illegally in the country prior to October 2021. Well, then that might not help you out, Wilfredo. And also, to add a caveat, and I don't know if you know, Nerd, what states is it still available? Because from what I understand, the authority, it was a federal program, it was a federal thing, but then it was handed over to the states to administer it. So I know some states had it, some states didn't, some states quit it before, some states extended it. So if you know, please let us know which states or where it's still going on. My name, Mexican private health insurance is a ripoff. Actually, here's the thing with private healthcare insurance. I'll tell you what, it's a lot less expensive than the United States. And here's the issue that you might run into with healthcare here in Mexico. Healthcare in Mexico is excellent. I mean, I was treated for cancer here in Mexico. I literally, and they used the same machines that they use in the famous cancer center in Houston. I got probably better treatment here in Mexico than I would have ever gotten in the United States. I mean, I can tell you right now that I probably wouldn't even be standing right now if it wouldn't have been for a Mexican doctor, a Mexican surgeon, from a private hospital, and the procedure when he was doing it, the way he discovered it. Not only that, but I was still undergoing insurance authorizations in the United States. Now, I'm lucky enough that my U.S. insurance, federal benefits insurance, covers me here in Mexico. The only catch is I have to pay out of pocket, and then they reimburse me the 90% minus the copay, or if it's a doctor's visit, whatever the copay is, whatever they'll reimburse me the fee the doctor charged minus the copay. So I've used my U.S. insurance. Now, do I have a Mexican healthcare policy? Yes. Here's the thing that Mexican healthcare insurance is very, very, first of all, it goes up with age. So even though it's affordable for me right now, by the time I'm 80 years old, it'll probably be 6 times the amount that I'm paying right now. I'm telling you right now, it goes up. Second of all, if you're a certain age or over a certain age, most insurance companies won't even insure you. Then, if you have a pre-existing condition, they won't insure you on that pre-existing condition. And some won't even insure you at all. So, and then there's waiting periods. And then the deductible is super high. So let's say I get a heart attack tomorrow. My deductible is, I guess, 80,000 pesos. That's a couple of grand, right? That I have to pay the hospital. I mean, we're talking about before we touch you, you have to pay the hospital. I think that's why you're saying it's a ripoff. So, and then, but here's the thing, it's private healthcare. So that's going to be the best healthcare you're going to get here. Public healthcare is good because some of the same famous doctors and everything else work in the IMSS or in Seguro Social. But the problem is that if you're a resident and you try to get IMSS, first of all, if you have any pre-existing condition, you're done. They're not going to give it to you. You can elect an IMSS. IMSS was a program that basically, they call it Seguro Social, Social Security. We call it Social Security here. But it's not a Social Security like you know it in the United States, but it's more like Medicare. And you can actually opt in. If you can get into IMSS, the only caveats to IMSS, for example, we live in a big city. My in-laws use IMSS. My father-in-law is diabetic. He goes in every month, gets his diabetes medication, but he also has to wait in line. He also has to, basically, sometimes they don't have the medication. They're out, so it still comes out of pocket. Now, as far as going to the doctor because I have a cold or going to, I don't know, my specialist, literally, it cost me, to be honest with you, I don't even file insurance claims. Your private healthcare insurance is not going to cover that. Second of all, I don't even file claims because it's so affordable to go to my specialist, to go to my endocrinologist, or to go to my head, nose, and throat doctor that it's not even worth me spending the time to get reimbursed after the copay. So can private healthcare insurance be a ripoff? Yes, it can. If you don't get sick and then when you get older and you're having to pay, but at the same time, the quality of healthcare that you're going to get is, and here's the thing, if you don't have insurance here, you show up with a heart attack at the private hospital, they're going to say, give us $40,000 down payment to make sure that you're going to pay. So you might end up worse off if you don't have insurance. That's the problem here in Mexico. There's this great system here, but the problem is that, and the insurance can be a ripoff because, I still have to pay $5,000 up front. What am I paying insurance for? But here's the thing also that you need to understand about private healthcare insurance is, for example, I get a heart attack and I have to pay my $5,000 deductible. That's the last time I have to pay a deductible. I don't have to pay anything related to that heart attack was covered. But then here you also have maximums that they'll cover. So, I mean, it's up to. But here's the other thing too, Moy. The premiums, if you're on a fixed income, it's not going to be worth it. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, the premiums are going to eat up a lot of your fixed income. So, private healthcare insurance with me, as far as my attitude on it, if you have the money and you have the recourses, then do it. Even though it seems like a ripoff, because you never know when you're going to be in a car accident, or whatever, and you end up in a private hospital and they want $50,000, or you're dying of a heart attack and they want $50,000 before they'll even let you in the emergency room. That's not going to work out very well. Also in IMSS, if you have to get a surgery, there's waiting periods, and you could end up in a system. It's a public healthcare system. Bottom line, it's a good public healthcare system. Some of the best doctors work there, but you have to deal with it. So as a short-term traveler visiting with my dog, is it more advisable to drive in or fly in? Actually, streetcar, if you want it depends on what I say about dogs and pets, and we run into this problem, is our dogs are too big to travel on the plane. So we would have to bring them in through the land border. And when we go back to the States, we have to go through the land border. We don't trust putting them in the cargo hold. I don't care even if they say it's pressurized. There's been too many incidents. If you do have a small pet that is whatever qualifies on the airline to go with you, it's up to what you need to do is get a hold of the airline to see what their pet policy is as far as getting them here. The only thing you need to do is when you get here, and actually if you're from the United States, I think also in Canada you're exempt from the shot records, but I would take the shot records, health records, everything with you, and all you have to do is get an agriculture inspector to look at the dog, and then the dog, and I'm not kidding you, and then there's also some. As far as the airlines, there's some, you might have to get a special crate. The agricultural inspector goes, looks good, lets you in. We've run into several agricultural inspections at the bridge. No problem. The land border's a lot easier because literally there's a red light, green light system, and all you have to do is end up going, once you come through the land border, you go over to the, basically to the immigration to get your FMM, and nobody asks you anything unless there's an agricultural inspector there and you get a red light. They don't ask you anything. They only inspect the dog just to make sure that he doesn't look sick when he's coming in. Now, the only thing that you also have to be careful because one of the things is one hurdle is getting them here, which is not much of a hurdle, but the other hurdle, I'll be perfectly honest with you. The other hurdle that you're going to run into is, okay, I'm going to stay at this Airbnb or I'm going to stay at this hotel, and not all the hotels are that Now, you might find more Airbnbs that are pet friendly, but the hotels have very strict pet policies, so you need to really do your research. And streetcar named Desire, they're good about airports to fly into. Actually, pretty much all the airports I've ever flown into pretty much are the same. There might be an argument maybe a year ago which airports you should fly into to have more odds of getting your 180-day FMM. One airport may be stricter than the other, but right now everybody's kind of laid off on that restriction, and there hasn't been any. And then also when, like I said, about a year ago or 2 years ago, they were giving everybody 5 days, 7 days, 14 days. And what a lot of people don't understand is that, and then when they started giving 180 days, it's back. It wasn't back. What happened is the United States ticked off the Mexican government because they were insisting that Venezuelans be treated differently through the FMM process. So basically Mexico says, oh, okay, Well, you want us to treat Venezuelans differently? We're going to treat you differently. So there was a period of about 2 or 3 months. I probably even did video. You might even look back on my thing about a videos and did videos saying immigration isn't giving is getting strict. That's what happened. So, and that's why I always warn people that are doing border runs. That's why I always warn you, you're going to probably get 180 days for now. But the day that there's a political situation, the day that someone decides multiple entries, just like the regularization program in San Miguel, from one day to the next, multiple entries don't qualify. That's the risk you run with doing border runs. I mean, I've had a lot of people argue with me about it. I don't advise it. I get it. If you need to do that, I mean, if that's your only option, that's your only option. But just be aware of the consequences. You could end up in the middle of a political situation where you left all your stuff in Mexico and they don't let you in. You know, that's where I always talk about 180 days isn't guaranteed. But right now, I'll be perfectly honest with you, it's almost guaranteed, believe it or not. But it changes like the wind. One day it's guaranteed and the other day it's not. Kai. Actually, Kai, Nerdo, I'm staying in an Airbnb that a family lives in. I'm just renting a room at the Airbnb. Here's the thing also you might be able to do. For example, my comprobante de domicilio, when we first got here, I put everything in my wife's name because it was a lot easier. Because I didn't have my residency yet. And then there's another thing too. Everybody, especially in a big city like Monterrey, you won't see this in other cities like, you might see it in Mexico City, but you won't see it like in San Miguel, Cancun, Rivera Maya, because they're used to having a lot of expat communities. But when I go into Monterrey, for example, they'll ask me for my INE, which is the Mexican national ID card. And I pull out my residency card because I don't have an INE, I can't vote. And or signing up for the cable service. Can I have your INE? They're always asking for an INE, and I pull out my residency card. So even after I got my residency card, it's kind of like they look at the residency card and it's like, okay, I'm supposed to put the INE number. What do I put? Actually, there is a number in the back of your residency card, but most people don't know, and they'll look at you kind of like, let me check with my boss how to do this because I don't know how to handle somebody with a residency card. I only know how to handle people with their national ID. So what I used to do is put everything in my wife's name, the utilities, the everything. And then, of course, she has a different name than me legally here. So whenever I needed a comprobante de domicilio for whatever, my comprobante de domicilio for SAT, I took a phone bill in someone else's name, and here's my phone bill. But basically the way SAT sees it is, as long as you have that comprobante, I think it's your utility bill has to be, in order to do a comprobante de domicilio, it has to be a utility bill. So a water bill, electric bill. If the family is nice enough to lend you the utility bill, you can go to SAT and say, here's my comprobante de domicilio. And they're not going to freak out that it's a different name totally, because it could be a family member. Like I said, everybody uses their actual born name here. So it's not unusual to have different last names, or even if they were to ask me, well, that's my wife. Oh, okay. Or that's my family member. Yeah, not a problem. So you might be able to do that with your Kai. Because really, when they say comprobante de domicilio, they just want to see the actual proof. And one of the things that you're staying in a room with a family, they may be able to help you out with a comprobante de domicilio. And actually just tell them, can you lend me a comprobante de domicilio because I'm going to go to the SAT. Nerdono was actually saying maybe a paper rental agreement can help. The only thing is, I think that's what she was telling you, is that she's in an Airbnb. Gringos are us. Yeah, Guanajuato City is a little bit harder. You are right. about non-Spanish speakers, as it's not a huge expat city, um, and they mentioned the Mexico relocation guide, um, but they aren't a big expat city. You're right. You're correct. There is some tourism to be had in Guanajuato City. There's a lot of history to in Guanajuato City. Um, Probably the more touristy areas are you're going to want to go to San Miguel, which is in the state of Guanajuato. Um, I don't know how the violence situation has uh, squared away in Guanajuato. The state of Guanajuato has gone through a little bit of. Guanajuato City is for the most part safe. You just don't want to go to the outskirts, certain little towns in the state of Guanajuato. Maybe even traveling from Guanajuato to San Miguel, you need to be a little bit more careful because there's a lot of issues that were going on probably 6 months ago, and I don't know if they're still going on right now. Um, but you're going to have a little bit of that. Guanajuato City is more of a tourist location for, actually, believe it or not, is a tourist location for Mexican. A lot of Mexicans go there for on vacation. Well, we did stay at a hotel in the Central when I went the first time. Well, we only stayed one night. And what she said about relocation guide was, I think she typed it in two different messages, or both Mark and Gina typed it in. I don't know who's behind the keyboard right now, but it's great. When she said Mexico relocation guide is a great resource to use to use to see if you have facilitators in Guanajuato to help you with that. And it is a great resource. I stand behind a Mexico relocation guide, and actually, I didn't put in the last video, but I'm putting in this video the link. We have a 10% coupon. I don't make anything money off of it. I support them totally free, and for my support, I guess what I get is a 10% coupon for my viewers that they can use to purchase the guide. But I don't make any money off of it, and I'm not sponsored by them neither. Steffi, good. We pulled up a list of hospitals. A lot seem pretty nice, but you need to find out the various locations to see if they speak English. Actually, Steph, what I would do is, actually, if you found a good list, go down the list and start calling them and see what. And Steffi, Gringos are us. Do you know if this chat is available on replay? The reason why I put the chat over here in the corner on the side is because when you replay, it only shows comments, not the chat. So a lot of people are like, I made a chat and it didn't come out. And it doesn't come out. So that's why I put this little box on the, well, I don't know what, if you're looking at it from the other side, it's on my right-hand side, but the little thing that says chat, that's why I put it up there, is so that people can try to refer to it and see it later on. The only thing that I've noticed is when you're looking at it on a phone, it's kind of hard to see, and it's better on an iPad or on a computer screen. But that's why I keep this chat over here on the other side, because it does not come out on the replays. Oh, wow, it does. Actually, Gringos R says, yes, it is when you watch the replay. Don't maximize it, and the chat shows up on the side. Okay, I didn't know that, Gringo. I'm going to actually try that. Thank you. Good tip. I always learn something every day from my viewers, actually. Believe it or not, I learn something every day. And that's the beauty of having such a great, great community. Do you have any tips, a streetcar for traveling to Oaxaca? Is it safe for solo females to stay in a hostel in this location, or throughout Mexico? Streetcar, my advice always, when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff, is if you can find a travel partner, do. I mean, and I'm not even talking for a solo female. I'm talking about for anybody. First of all, it makes the trip funner, or I don't know if there's even a word such as funner, but it makes the trip more fun. Or, but that's number one. Number two, no matter where you go in the world, and I'm not even going to say in Mexico, because anywhere you go in the world, if you're a solo traveler, you're alone, and I'm talking about not just females, I'm talking about males too. If you are any type of what would be considered prey to a criminal, it's you can do things to mitigate all of that stuff. For example, you're going to go to Oaxaca. If you're going to travel solo, make sure that you're going to be in an area that's very touristy. For example, I'll give you an example. If you're going to, and I'm getting away from Oaxaca, but if you're going to be on the beaches of Cancun and you're traveling alone, but here's the thing with Cancun, you may not have to worry about local pickpockets. You might have to worry about other tourists taking advantage of you. So I always advise to not travel solo, period, with any, I mean, female. I know I get this question a lot. I'm a solo female, or I'm an older female, or I'm an older man. Well, look, this goes for everybody. I'm not talking about, whether you're older, younger, female, male. It's for everybody. Always try to get a travel companion. Number one, it's like I said, it's more fun. I do know that some people don't have that option, but if you're gonna travel solo, make sure you research for example, in Oaxaca, there's several places. We went to Zipolite, Puerto Peñasco, no, not Puerto Peñasco. Oh my God, the beach that's there, Puerto Escondido, and those are they're surfer areas, more surfer hippie areas, and actually mostly surfers staying in hostels and stuff like that. So it's safe, maybe to go as a solo traveler. And you know what? I'm going to keep female or male out of it. If you're a solo traveler, let's keep it at that, because I'm very, very adamant about this, because it's not just, we want to stay away from stereotypes that it's only solo females that are in danger, or solo males, or no. It's everybody, whether you're in danger or not. So what you want to do is have your travel partner. If you can't do that, make sure you're in a tourist area. But even if you're in a tourist area and you're staying in a hostel, like I said, you've got a lot of surfers, a lot of, I guess, other people that might be traveling solo that, may want to take advantage of a person, period. And so you need to be aware of that and just stay in the tourist areas. I wouldn't venture anywhere outside. If you're an explorer and you love to go out, I mean, my wife and I love to explore, but my wife and I always go out together. We always go out in a pair. I mean, even when we're traveling and I want to go for a walk or she wants to go for a walk, the only places we really go for a walk by ourselves is in Cancun or and for example, we were in Cabo at the resort on the beach. And so we pretty much stay together all the time. My wife and I are very trained. Both of us come from a law enforcement background, so we both are very vigilant all the time. You just need to be very vigilant. You should be fine as long as you do your research and you're not staying in a bad part of town, or like I said, even tourist areas can be questionable because you're going to have your people. And like I said, in certain tourist areas, it could be other tourists, or it could be somebody saying, hey, this person's traveling alone. So they make a better target than for whatever it might be, to rob your wallet or do anything that they want to do, rob you, break into your hotel room, those types of things. Something simple. So you just want to, or maybe they want to try to sell you or scam you into something, or scam you into buying something, or you're more of a target when you're alone. And that goes for anywhere in the world, not just Mexico. Um, I always give that. Plain Dars. I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding regarding citizenship after X amount of time with a permanent resident, or I can stay as a permanent resident only. Okay. Um, you can stay as a permanent okay. I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding regarding citizenship of Mexico after X amount of time. Yeah, you can stay a permanent. Once you get your permanent residency, Blaine, once you get your permanent residency, you can stay here the rest of your life. Permanent residency is permanent. That's why it's called permanent. You don't even have to live here. That's one of the, Mexico's one of the, actually, believe it or not, as a citizen, if you leave the country and live outside the country for more than 5 years, you lose your naturalized citizenship. So it's kind of weird. There are benefits to getting Mexican citizenship. When I talk about that, I want to do it. I want to do it for personal reasons. It has more to do with my heritage reasons, but there are benefits to keeping your residency. Once you're a permanent resident, you're a permanent resident. So even if you start at temporary and then you do your 4 years, you get your permanent. When I talked about being in Mexico after X amount of time is, for example, let's say I'm a permanent resident, I want to become a Mexican citizen, and I want to convert over to a Mexican citizen. That's where the time requirements come up. That's where the time requirements require you to, if you're married to a Mexican citizen, you can do it after 2 years as a resident. If you're married to, if you're, I think a descendant or you come from the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain, you can do it. But then I think, like I said, when I was talking about the 5 years, that's if you want to apply and you've been a permanent resident for 5 years and you want to, for whatever reason, get your Mexican passport. Some people do it they don't want to do a fideicomiso anymore with, fideicomiso is a land trust because you can't buy, if you're not a Mexican citizen, you can't buy land on the beach or within a certain distance of the border or certain distance of the beach or of the beach. So, but the way around it is you get a land trust, and some people just don't trust a land trust. Actually, I just got a question on that because the land trust is run by a bank, and what if the bank goes bankrupt? You're not going to lose your land trust, but it could be a lot of legal issues later on. So you do want to, that's where I was talking about that. And so don't worry, you can stay a permanent resident the rest of your life. If you are 180 days but don't know until you get to the immigration officer if they will give it to you, what happens if they don't give you 180 days but you already bought a ticket? Well, I'll tell you what, Roberto, is the only way you can. Here's the thing: the immigration officer is going to issue you whatever they're going to issue you. If you already bought a ticket and you're going to show that I'm going to be here in Mexico, I'm going to visit for 6 months, here's my tickets, here's my reservation, that's going to be your proof to say, hey, wait a second, you only gave me 60 days. I have a plane ticket and I have reservations. I was going to come here for 6 months. I'm a winter. A lot of winter tourists come here, and they come here on an FMM because they basically get an Airbnb for 6 months, and there's a lot of legitimate reasons why you're going to need 180 days. Unfortunately, if they say 60 or 50 or 30 or whatever they say, less than 180 days, then you got an issue with your plane ticket. But then your plane ticket also helps. You have a return plane ticket going home in 180 days. So wait a second, I need 180 days because that's what my plane ticket says. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I'm going to tell you right now, Roberto, more than likely, and I don't know where you're going to be flying into, you'll probably get 180 days if you ask for it. Because like I said, they're trying to get people, into the airport as quickly as possible. So Most airports are giving 180 days by default. Oh, wow. I didn't even know. For Colonel Jim Warhol, there's a mobile app called Mexican. Well, I'll actually put that in my description to help with the test. Yeah, it probably gives. I've never heard of that app. Thank you for that suggestion. Oh, and also another suggestion too. Mexico is a fantastic resource for a slew of different questions. She vets her recommendations, and she is a bomb. Okay, I thought, and I'm gonna wrap it up here in just a sec here because we're going over our hour. And RA, perfect. We just went to Oaxaca City in June. Safe place all over. Lots of people staying in hostels and seemed okay. I wouldn't be afraid alone. Um, Thank you for the advice, RA. Awesome. We like I said, we went to Zipolite, we went to Puerto Escondido. We haven't gone to Oaxaca City yet. Um, Pretty much Puerto Escondido and Oaxaca City were, Zipolite, which is a beach there, are awesome places. I never felt, and actually it was mostly European tourists there that were there, and it was mostly tourists actually. We hear Oaxaca's a great place. They have, of course, the famous mezcal is made out of Oaxaca. There's a lot of tours and a lot of things to do, and that's one place I wouldn't worry about. But I always still say if you have a travel partner, it's always best to go with somebody or always be and paired up with somebody. It just makes you less of a, and for simple things, not even worrying about getting assaulted or robbed at gunpoint. Sometimes it's just the pickpockets that'll go after you because they think you're a little bit more vulnerable. I'll tell you what, streetcar we do use booking.com, which is one that also does hostels and that type of stuff. And we've used them a lot. Actually, we used to use booking.com before Airbnb was even around. So that's one good place to try to find a place to stay. But what I would do is when we used to use booking.com, first of all, we used to look at the reviews, and then we also used to go to TripAdvisor and then look at the reviews for that particular place on TripAdvisor. If they have reviews for it, especially if it's a hostel or anything else. Steffi, our MR Mexico relocation guide, Canje facilitator, will meet us at the airport. We need to pay him after exiting the airport in pesos. Do we just use an ATM? Actually, I'll tell you what, Steffi, there's usually an ATM at the, you might have to pay a little bit more in fees at the airport. Everything kind of rips you out, even in the US airports and Canadian airports. If you find an ATM, you should be able to get money out through the ATM. Some airports, depending if it's an international airport, they have those little exchange, what do you call it? Exchange houses inside the airport. They're not going to give you a good rate. You're probably going to take a hit on the rate. But if you're going to use the ATM, just make sure when it asks you, you want this exchange rate, and then if you push no, it'll say, make sure it's going to be the bank rate. Always say you're going to take out in pesos. Never take the bank's exchange rate because they're trying to rip you off. And I think I did a live stream about that, how to use debit cards and ATM cards. If there's no ATM inside the airport, and especially if it's a facilitator that came from, if it's a facilitator that came from Mexico Relocation Guide, they're going to understand. And as a matter of fact, they'll probably even take you to a location where there's an ATM and a bank close by or whatever it might be. But you can use your ATM card. Actually, it's probably better than carrying U.S. cash because if you don't find a exchange window, what are you going to do with the cash here? And especially if you exchange here, even at an exchange house, they're going to give you 16 to 1 instead of 17. And you might take a little bit of hit on your credit card. It might be a little bit lower, but you're going to take a worse hit if you try to exchange cash. Okay, Nerd Uno. In the states of the chocolate vehicles for legalizing there's a state of Sonora, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, Tamaulipas, Baja California Sur, Sinaloa, Durango, Zacatecas, Nayarit, Jalisco, and Michoacan. So it's pretty active still. Those were most of the states that were pretty active with that program. All right. Okay. Colonel William, I'm going to take one more. I've been trying for months to get an appointment for permanent resident in the Indianapolis. I have used the direct number for the consulate, the national number, and the website. Actually, Colonel Warhol, it depends which consulate. I'm not too familiar with the Indianapolis consulate. And I do know some are strict about using that Mexitel or that website, and there's never any appointments. The best bet, what I would try to do is get the email address. They have, usually, if you go to the website of that consulate, they have an email address that you can try to email and even ask a general question by saying, the consulates most of the times won't pick up the phone. And then if you get the email address, you just say, I'm trying to get how do I get an appointment? They usually have someone that is pretty good about answering those and checking those emails. Streetcar, I'm going to answer this question because I actually answered it in one of my other live streams. Is it better to withdraw my cash in US dollars? They're not, the ATMs down here will not dispense US dollars, okay? But what they will do is when you put your ATM card and say, I want 3,000 pesos, right? The ATM will say, or what you'll see a lot, I saw it in Cabo, especially in Cabo San Lucas. How much is this hat? $19. No, in pesos, because I have a Mexican debit card. I don't. Oh, okay, it's 300 pesos. And most places though, when you put it in an ATM, what it'll do is it'll say, okay, you're going to take out 3,000 pesos. Let's say the exchange rate right now is 17 point whatever, and then they'll say, little thing will come in and say, okay, this ATM offers an exchange rate instead of 17 or whatever of 15.5, which equals so many dollars. So what it tries to do is trick you into saying, do you accept this exchange rate? And if you say yes, then you're going to basically be taking your money out at 15 to 1. What you do is you say no, and then it gives you a warning saying, just be aware that we can't control the exchange rate and you have to, whatever the bank determines. Well, whatever the bank determines is going to be close to the 17.05. So what you want to make sure is always withdraw in pesos. What I mean by withdraw, because what it does is, do you want to withdraw in US dollars? This is the exchange rate, this is how many dollars. But it's going to dispense pesos. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is say, no, I want the bank rate. Worst thing that can happen, even if the bank rate is never going to be lower than what the ATM is offering you. The exchange rate is always going to be at whatever the exchange rate was for the day, and minus maybe a fee. And the Schwab card, actually RA, if you have a Charles Schwab account, is great. They refund all your fees. There's a lot of banks that will, like it'll actually say, hey, do you want to pay the 175 peso fee? And you say yes or whatever. But most banks, I have my Plains Capital, I think, bank out of Texas. They refund your fees. And Schwab is one of them too. So every belated thanks for recommending MHPB, BPB insurance. Sometime last year when I consulted you before I retired, I took so much stress off. Health insurance was my biggest concern. I'm glad I was of help. Actually, I'm gonna. This is going over my 1 hour, but Colonel Jim Hart, they had the lottery with the consulate in Kansas City. I was able to get an appointment, and Gina didn't. They managed to get us both in on the different date. It's a crapshoot. Yeah, it's a mess sometimes. But the best advice is to email. Find an email address to the consulate, like a general box. And actually, some of the consulates were requiring you to email your information into that box before your appointment. Actually, this is a good point. This is what I was talking about when someone said insurance was a ripoff. Uh, my travel vlog said my boyfriend died in Cabo San Lucas because I'm sorry to hear that, and my condolences. I don't know how long ago this happened, but my condolences. But this is an example why I have a Mexican insurance policy, even though maybe I think it's a ripoff too. But the doctor that treated him at the hotel refused to take him to the hospital for treatment for a heart condition because he didn't have Mexican insurance. Now, if you don't have Mexican insurance, private healthcare insurance, or you don't have the cash or a credit card to pay for whatever you need to pay for right up front, you're going to have a hard time with our private hospitals if you don't have an insurance policy here. So, but it can be tricky going. And however, he worked for a Canadian provincial government with excellent health. I proved it. Insurance company confirmed money transfer within 25. Doctor still refused. End result, hour later, he died. And I'm going to tell you right now, my travel vlog, that is very true here in Mexico, because I do know, I used to have Blue Cross Blue Shield who said they could, it depends on the hospital and everything else. There's some insurance companies that will actually try to, some of the insurance companies will basically try to negotiate with the hospital. Most of them will say, too bad, so sad, we want the cash up front. I don't know, depending on the insurance company. And the problem is that is the truth. They will actually say, you pay up front or a large deposit. For example, I went into the hospital because I have U.S. insurance. It covers me, but I have to pay up front. As a matter of fact, the last surgery that I did, it was like actually the deposit was more than the actual surgery cost. I actually got a refund on my credit card. But one of the things, if you're traveling here, especially with private, always have, if you can, have a credit card with available credit that you can get into a private hospital. And if you need to, what can happen, what they can do, for example, if, for example, you're, like you said, insurance confirmed that they could do a money transfer, the hospital can work with you on that, but normally they're going to want a lot up front or almost everything, at least whatever it takes to treat that person for a couple of days. Unfortunately, that's the catch-22 or I don't know what you want to call it, catch-22 of having insurance here in Mexico. And that's why we have it. What if I'm in a car accident? I don't have my credit card to pull out and give them when I'm unconscious or somebody else. I'm almost sure they'll give you emergency treatment, but at the same time, as long as someone says he's got insurance, then, or the insurance company can say, hey, Nate. Thanks for the green. I think I saw your video. Appreciate sharing the journey. I'm going to get going now. Let me see if I've got any more. Jonathan, you're still in Monterrey, hopefully. Not hopefully. Hopefully you get back to the States. Also, don't rock around with designer clothing, purses, smart watches, luxury watches, expensive phones, anything that just shows too much bling. Yeah, you're right, Jonathan. Thank you for dropping in. I hadn't seen you in a while. I just saw your last post on the Facebook group that you're in Monterrey. Um, but hopefully you get back home soon. I know you're waiting for your wife's process to finish here. Uh, Deanna J. Oh, I bought the Mexico relocation, but the facilitator listed for Puebla has never answered any of my messages or call. You know what, Deanna? What I would do, get a hold of Mariana, who owns the Mexico relocation guide, because let me tell you something. If these people that she vets are not attending to her clients, she will take them on the off the list, and she can also and email her. She responds to her customers. If you're a customer of hers, she responds very quick, as quickly as she can, and tell her, hey, this facilitator Puebla not working, and she will get a hold of the facilitator to call you back. And if she doesn't, she's going to tell the facilitator, you know what? Too bad, so sad. You're not going to be on my list anymore, and I'm going to get another one. So that would be the best thing. Well, actually. Okay, I found it in the line at the immigration, but I'm sure he can help. He thought my paperwork was perfect, but the lady said no. He even argued with her for a minute. Okay, Deanna, I didn't know you had already tried to do your immigration process, but if you would have done that earlier, Mariana would have really. She's very, very quick about that, and she's very, very passionate that if anybody that's on her preferred list is not acting right or not treating her customers right, they get taken off the list. And actually, what I would do, Deanna, is actually reach out to Mariana and tell her what happened. Because even if you've already gotten your stuff taken care of, I think it's very important for Mariana to know, because she's very, very receptive, and that's one of the things that. Yeah, Ernie, not everyone has a travel partner or buddy to travel with. And I totally understand that. And that's why I said best thing is to get a travel partner, but I'm not saying that you're going to have to go solo. You're going to have to go solo. And I always give that first, okay? That's not a, but, and I understand, yeah, you're right. Solo travel isn't that much, but it does feel liberating, and that nothing should stop you from coming here. And I'm telling you right now, just because you're going to come here solo, all I'm telling you is just be a little bit more careful. Stay in the tourist areas. Oaxaca, RH, like RH said, is hey, don't worry. We went there. A lot of people were staying, and actually in Oaxaca, I see a lot of European visitors there. Stay in a decent hostel. Do your homework. Look on TripAdvisor where you're staying. Those types of things, that's going to help you, and you should be fine as long as you don't go outside the realm of, just do things. And like I said, it's anywhere in the world. Even if you were back in the States, I'm almost sure if you go to work, or if you're from Canada or wherever you're from, you have to go by yourself different places. I mean, that's just the facts of life, so. Those are precautions I give you, even if you're back home. Right? Maybe it might be more unsafe back home wherever you live. So as long as you take all those precautions, let someone know. What I do also, and what I would do with you, for being a solo traveler, is keep in touch with someone back home. And I've always said, my wife and I, we have. And I know some people don't like this thing about tracking and everything else and privacy, but we use Life 360, I think it is. There's several apps like that. And or even Google Maps, I think, and WhatsApp, you can share your location. And Find My iPhone, you can share your location. So what we do is we share our location, so we know where each other is all the time. That way, if something happens to you and your friend hasn't heard from you for a while, they can look at your location and they can say, oh, okay. And even if they have to contact the embassy because they haven't heard from you for a while, then you at least have a last location where the person was. So that's another thing that I always tell people is, and you might be solo, but let me rephrase it. Just don't be solo when it comes to you're by yourself, but you're not solo if someone else is tracking you. And you can turn it off when you get back home. And then come up with a plan that you tell your friend you're going to call them every 2 hours or 2 days or every. My little ones are trying to get inside the room here. That you can't get in every 2 days or whatever, but or I'm going to call you every day or every other day. All righty. Well, I got a lot of feedback and a lot of people going back and forth. I think I'm gonna kind of cut it off here at an hour and 39. I think my little ones are getting very impatient with coming in here. But I guess we're gonna go ahead and cut it off here. Maybe I should do a couple of more not so subject specific, and that way I can answer more questions. Hope this information was useful. Like I always tell you guys, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next Sunday. Till next time.